Siki C. Patterson, owner and operator of I Prevail K-12 Academic Learning Center and I Prevail K-12 Educational Consulting. As an educational consultant, I teach parents how to disrupt the one-size-fits-all practices, policies, and procedures of the public school system so that their child can receive a quality education. Typically, when I come in, it's because a parent has posed a question to me about helping their child to receive a quality education. However, lately, God has been stirring my heart to share my own experiences, truths, and expertise as an educator with more than 10 years of experience in the public school system so that I can help all those who are trying to come up and help their children receive a quality education to understand what barriers they may face, but also not only provide problems, but also provide solutions to their problems. So in a previous video, I shared that my passion had met my purpose and that it literally created in me a righteous indignation. In tonight's video, what I want to come in and share is the story of an influential mother in my life who has helped and given me a purpose to train up my son in the manner in which he should go. And since today is Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day, guys and gals. I wanted to come in and share that story because it's been weighing heavy on my heart on today. And as someone who literally studies the Bible to see what is it that God wants me to do, not only in purpose and passion, but also in life, in family, in marriage, in motherhood. And so I've used the Bible as a stepping stone or a foundation to building a solid life and blueprint for how I'm going to walk in what God has called me to do. So that mother today that I'll be discussing is Moses' mom. And if you know anything about Moses, then you know that Moses helped to bring the Israelites out of Egypt, out of bondage. And a couple of years ago, God gave me that mandate. God basically, maybe 3 years ago, God said, Nikki, I want you to go to Pharaoh and I want you to tell him to release my people. Let my people go. And if you've been following me for any length of time on social media, you may have seen that as some of my captions on my post from 3 years back. Pharaoh, let my people go. Well, of course, you may say, well, there are no pharaohs here. Well, we also know that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against systems and principalities and rulers of darkness. So we're not talking about a physical pharaoh. We're talking about a system. And the system that God wants me to go to and demand that it lets his people go is the public school system. In my parish, currently, the majority of the black schools are failing. And if we know anything about God and who he has called his children to be, we also know that he's called us to be a royal priesthood. Well, I'm not sure if you can be royalty and in bondage. And so with that being said, we need to come up out of systems that are holding us down and keeping us from living out the lives that we so choose and desire to live. And so today, as I come in, I want to share the story of Moses' mom because her journey or her experiences with her son not only catapulted me into believing that I can be what God has called me to be, but it also gave me a blueprint and a foundation for how I can do it. And so when we start off in Exodus chapter 1, we're looking at Moses' mom and, we're looking at the Hebrews and they're overpopulating Egypt, and it's giving concern or worry to the Egyptians because they're fearful that if the Egyptians ever rise up, that they would be able to fend off them for themselves and fend for themselves. And so as we think about even black people in America, that's something, we came from slavery, we came from Jim Crow, we came from segregation, we came from so many different things. And the population has always been a concern, and so for me, it's not for us to rise up or anything, but it's to rise up and take our power as far as who are we? Why are we doing so poorly in society? And I know for me, one of the reasons that I was able to overcome poverty and get out of conditions that no longer served me was by getting a great education. And so that has been my only purpose for trying to improve the low performing schools in my community. I know that with a great foundation, that students are able to not only do well in elementary school, but in middle school, but also in high school. And those students who don't do well in high school, they're ready for college or career. And so for me, asking that to partner with the local leaders is simply so that our black schools can do well and that our black students that are coming from low income communities, they can do well and succeed beyond the school walls. And so today when I come in, I'm going to share how Moses his story relates to my own story and show you why that passion and that purpose is so, so powerful, and how it's going to help me to do what God has put me here in the earth to do, and that's education reform. So, as I said, and in chapter 1, the Egyptians are concerned that the Israelites are growing too powerful. And so the Egyptian king has put out an order to the midwives. And the midwives are basically the women who are delivering the Hebrew babies. And he's put out this order that they kill, if it's a boy, to kill the Hebrew baby, but if it's a girl, to let it live. And so in chapter 2, we notice that Moses' mother creates a plan. She wants her son to live. And I know if you've watched any of my videos, you've seen that I want my son to live. It may not be a physical death that we're trying to prevent him from, but a spiritual, mental, emotional, all of those are things that can kill our children if we're not careful. And so what happens is Moses' mom basically takes and hides her son for the first 3 months of his life. And then after, when she's no longer able to hide him, she puts him into water. And that water is basically the river where Pharaoh's daughter, or the Egyptian king's daughter, bathes. And his daughter sees this basket or an ark or whatever you want to call it that held Moses. And she asks her servant to basically draw the basket out. Well, first and foremost, Moses' mom didn't just go to the water without a plan. She went to the water with a plan. And that was to make sure that Moses' sister was stationed right there. And so now the Egyptian princess knows that this baby is a Hebrew, and she's looking around for someone to help her with it. And so Moses' sister comes up and she's like, hey, I can go get his mom and I can help her, take him to her that she can wean him, and I'll bring him back to you. Guys, anytime you're going to train up your child, you need to have a plan for how you're going to do it. And so a lot of times you come in and you see me going back to my own past to see what things could hinder my child from reaching his future. That's because I have a plan for what is going to happen in my child's life. Am I God and going to say that it's going to happen exactly like this? No, but I know that without a plan, the people will perish. So I make sure to have a plan, and Moses' mom did the same. So, of course, Pharaoh's daughter gives the basket to Moses' sister. She doesn't know this is Moses' sister at this time. But basically, Moses' sister takes the basket back to her mom. Mom weans him. Then he brings the basket back to Pharaoh's daughter. Guys, sometimes God will put you in the situation just so that he can get the glory. And those situations may not necessarily be what you would be normally into or able to grow up into unless it's favor from God. And so I truly believe that God had favored Moses even from the beginning. And so just like Moses, I truly believe that I was favored of God, coming from poverty, being able to end up in the school system, not because I wanted to, because I had seen a long line of teachers and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. They don't make any money. They don't do this. But here's the deal. When I graduated college and I applied for my master's program, I needed 2.5 years of work experience before I can actually get accepted to that program. Well, I didn't have any work experience. And the first job that I seen was the business services secretary in the local school system. So I came home and I applied for it and I got the job. God makes no mistakes. Favor is favor no matter how we look at it. And I've never left the school system since then, or I've never left back out of the state of Louisiana since then. But anyway, getting back to the story of Moses and how his story correlates or compares to my own. And so now we're both in unfamiliar territories. Who would have ever known that a person who came from poverty and didn't even think about working in a school system is now going to be working in the school system? But we know that all things work together for God, for the good of those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. And so now Moses is in the Egyptian palace and he's learning all of the rules and the systems and everything. And then guess what happens? Righteous indignation sets in. It sets in. And he goes out and he sees one of his fellow Hebrew brothers being attacked. And he's basically, well, at first he sees 2 Hebrews attacking each other. Well, no, he sees the Hebrew being attacked and he kills the Egyptian that's attacking him. And the next day he goes out and he's trying to confront and he's trying to tell the Hebrews that they shouldn't be fighting each other. And it's like, well, who are you? We saw what you did the day before. And sometimes it's like that. We're trying to find our way and we mess up sometimes. And it's like, wait, hold on. I was trying to protect you guys. They were attacking you. And I came out to say, yeah, but you still did what you did. And so even me, I tried to find my own way. Nikki, you're from Darcyville. How you gonna tell somebody what to do? None of your brothers graduated from high school. They did this and they did that, and it's like, you kind of sort of maneuver through all of those things, and you kind of lose your path and lose what God is telling you to do. But nonetheless, Moses did flee, and I truly believe that his fleeing period was because God wanted to prepare him. And so I stuck it out in the school system, and my period came where I fled from the system when I was asked to compromise students for scores. And I was like, I can't do this. God said not one of these little ones should perish. And I literally resigned the next day. And I haven't looked back. I haven't been in the school system since then. And am I telling anyone to leave their job? No. I'm just telling you that when God makes it uncomfortable for you to be in a place, it doesn't matter what you have purpose. If God's plan is for you to not be there, then you won't be there. And so now Moses is away and he's basically living a life. But here's the deal. God will prepare you in your wilderness for the job or the purpose that he has ordained your life for. Moses' main job wasn't to be royalty in the Egyptian palace. His main job was to bring God's people out of bondage. And so he had to be in there to recognize the systems, to recognize what was going on, to recognize the practices, the policies, and the procedures in order for him to know how to operate and maneuver within that. So I truly don't believe that God made any mistake when he placed me inside of the public school system, behind the scenes, first of all, in the central office, working with all of the administrators and the district and leaders and the superintendent, and learning all of the practices, policies, and procedures behind the scenes in the public school system, and then taking me to the front lines as a classroom teacher and seeing how success can be given to these children when you're intentional about the success that you're going to give to them. And so I'm like, okay, God, why are you doing all of this? And then now you actually need to leave. Like, I love teaching. What do you mean, leave the system? And that's the same thing. I don't think Moses had a problem with being in the Egyptian palace and, having the treatments of a royalty. But when purpose calls you out from that, it's time for you to go. And so he flees and, he's there, he's preparing and doing different things. And guess what? Nikki's also fleeing and she's preparing and she's doing different things. But nothing is going to take the knowledge that you've acquired while you were in the enemy's camp, while you were in Pharaoh's palace, while I was in the public school system. I learned the practices, policies, and procedures. I learned what was holding Black students back. I learned all of the things. So now I can be able to use it. And now God is calling Moses back. Moses, come out of wilderness. I need you to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. Nikki, come out of wilderness. I need you to go back to the public school system and tell them to let my people go. But he's not sending us without a plan. And so it's no coincidence that Moses has the staff and he has all of these words from God. It's no coincidence that God had me to sit out and write a book called How to Win as a Principal. And not only to write that book, How to Win as a Principal, but also to use my experience of advocating for my own son, my experience as a classroom teacher for more than 10 years, and put all of that knowledge into the book. And guess what it falls under? The 3 things we're now trying to do to create a plan for how we improve the Black schools in Assumption. Those 3 things. How do we get cultural representation in there? In my book, I have 3 chapters that talks about how do we get cultural representation into our schools. How do we hire the right people? How do we get a stable staff? There's chapters in my book that talks about how do we do these things? How do we decrease discipline and behavior? There's chapters in that book that talks about it. How do we build relationships? How do we improve the school performance scores? All of that is what God gave me, and he wrapped it up in a plan called diversity. And each one of those letters, the D, it stands for demographics. The I, investigate the data. V, have a vision for success. E, employ the right teachers. R, relationship building. S, student center. I, instructional practices. T, train your teachers. And Y, your access has been granted. You now have a plan for what you're going to do to improve these low performing schools. So use it. And I don't think God makes a mistake. So just like Moses went in and he demanded that Pharaoh release his people, guess what? Pharaoh wasn't trying to release God's people. These people are providing us with cheap labor, and they're doing everything we need to do, and we don't have to do it ourselves. Guess what? God is now saying, Nikki, go back to the public school system and ask them to release my people. All of the knowledge you've gained over the 10 years that you've worked in the system, over the last 3-4 years that you've advocated for your own son, over the last 18 months, over the last 9 months of you actually working homeschool to get your son to public schools, great quality education. All of that is needed. Nothing will be lost. And I'm like, but God, they're not listening. He said, yeah, they didn't listen to Moses either. How many plagues did I have to send on Egypt? So we're sitting here and we're trying to figure out in the natural what God is doing in the spirit. And God said, your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. Come on, Nikki, keep doing what I'm asking you to do. And so, guys, I'll be honest with you. I don't care if it's 10 a.m., 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 2 p.m. And God says, Nikki, I put something on your heart and I want you to say it. I want you to speak to the people. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to speak what God says to speak. So, guys, if you have not gotten a book, How to Win as a Principal, and we're looking for a plan to improve our low-performing Black schools, that plan has already been written. It has already been written. It is inside the book. It is a 9-step plan called How to Win as a Principal, and it's a diversity plan that's inside of that book. I don't do anything without consulting with God, and I guarantee you the things that we're having concerns or issues about in the public school system are the things that have been written in this book. When Moses went back to Egypt and said, Pharaoh, let my people go, he didn't go unprepared. And so I guarantee you, when we're looking to improve our low-performing schools, that's the plan for it. We just have to take it and implement it. So I'm ready and willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that our children, like myself, can receive a quality education and rise above societal norms for people who grow up in poverty. I know that, like Moses' mom, I'm going to place my son in a basket in God's care and pray that God continues to equip and empower me so that I can make sure that he's protected, so that he can carry out whatever plan that God has placed him for. And I pray that you, as parents, do the same thing. Today is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all mothers. And I pray that you're setting your child up for success. If you have any questions and you want to know more about my story, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can email me, info@nikkicpatterson.com. You can send me an email at info@nikkicpatterson.com. You can check out my website, www.nikkicpatterson.com. Or you can check us out on Facebook, Nikki C. Patterson, YouTube, Nikki C. Patterson. Just check us out. Make sure you get the plan so that your child does not only go above what God has said that he's going to be able to go above, but also that no one gives your child wooden nickels. Have a great night. Bye.